All right, welcome back to UFC Fight Night. Allen versus Curtis 2. We got the preview here with Jackson Grant and myself to walk you through exactly how to build your portfolio. As you can see by the first fight on the screen that we have here, we have names that I'm not going to try to pronounce because pronunciation is not my game, nor is gambling ads. I don't know why it just took me to a random screen, but here we are. Anyways, Jackson, take us away about these prelim fights. I know we can't show the prices, unfortunately, because we're working through that on some technical issues. But go ahead and walk us through this one.
So Nora Cornell, I know we can't see the prices, but she's at $3.99. Melissa Mullins, aka Dixon, is currently sitting at $2.44, so over a dollar cheaper. At some pretty low share prices, so good relative percentage of Nora Cornell's stock price there. Some just good inherent value for the sportsbook favorite and Melissa Mullins there without even going into the fight. Um, I think it is going to be a fun fight. It'll be exciting. Mullins, super powerful and accurate, primarily a striker. Definitely a lot more composed, looks a lot more composed than someone who only has 6 fights in their career. She's 6-0. Just clean striking, good at working in the clinch or at range, in the pocket or at range. She can work in grappling too when she needs to. Her takedowns aren't the best, but she does work them in sometimes. And when she does get someone down and on top, she has good control there. And she is coming off an interesting decision win over Irene Alexkiva, where she was dropped, but also able to land a good amount of control minutes, get a close win there on decision. And Nora Cornell, powerful striker, very aggressive, has a pretty versatile striking style, does a good job of mixing in elbows and kicks. Doesn't really look to wrestle, but does have solid BJJ on the ground. And is coming off what I would consider to be a really sketchy win over Jocelyn Edwards, um, where she demonstrated really bad takedown defense, sketchy cardio, but did demonstrate her toughness. She did get to decision and get to the win. Um, and I mean, both have had pretty sketchy wins recently, but I definitely think Nora's win over Jocelyn was the sketchier of the two. Nora showed trash takedown defense, showed that she was lacking cardio. And yes, Melissa did get dropped in her last fight, but I'm not going to pick somebody hoping that their opponent is going to get dropped early. So Mullins is definitely the pick. Tougher, more well-rounded fighter. She'll have the takedowns if she needs them. And cheaper on PS.
Let them cook. All right, Jackson, what's the next fight we're walking to?
Um, all of the prelim female fights have a
So,
ton of value. I feel like we can just hit those for the prelims. So we could go to Piera
Calvillo.
Rodriguez and Cynthia Calvillo.
Sounds good. All right, Calvillo fight coming up next here. Bada bing. All right, walk us through this one.
Okay, so Cynthia's price is $4.65 last time I checked. Pierre Rodriguez, $3.17. So more than a dollar cheaper, again, on some pretty inexpensive stocks. And Cynthia Calvillo is currently on a 5-fight losing streak. Will say there are some decent losses in there. Her loss to Lupi, she actually looked pretty good. And we know how good Lupi Godinez is, despite her recent loss to Verna Jandiroba. But despite her age, Cynthia Calvillo is a good fighter. She has good grappling, good takedowns, decent striker, just well-rounded generally. But at her age, she's slow, lacking in power. And when she gets you to the ground, she'll try to get in a few strikes generally before going for a submission. She's going up against Piera Rodriguez, really good striker, definitely real finishing ability, will let her hands fly. She is generally intentional with her punches, but she'll wing them sometimes. And she has okay takedown defense at 66%. Good on the ground when it gets there. She has 12 takedowns in 4 fights. And she's coming off a loss to Jillian Robertson. She shot a bad takedown, paid the price for it, lost on the ground because of a really bad takedown attempt. And I mean, maybe earlier in her career, I would have taken Cynthia Calvillo here, but I think she's done at this point. She's too old and slow for someone who's as fresh and explosive as Piera Rodriguez. Cynthia Calvillo, 0-5 in her last five. Piera 4-1. Seems like when Cynthia lost to Jessica Andrade, she kind of that was kind of the end of her successful career. So I think all signs point to Piera here. She's the cheaper fighter. I think it's a no-brainer.
Oh yeah. All right. So the next one we have is going to be Norma, correct?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to bouts. There we go. Norma Dumont. Perfect. All right. How's this one going to break down?
Cool. Yeah. So Germaine Durandami, $14.29 on Prediction Strike. Norma Dumont, $7.96. So these are expensive stocks, but you're still getting one of the fighters at half the price of the other. So some pretty considerable inherent value there for the sportsbook favorite in Nora Dumont. And she's a really solid striker, very technical, sound takedown defense. She lands 4 significant strikes a minute, absorbs 2, so a good differential there. And has good grappling to complement that. Doesn't have the best takedowns, but shoots at a high volume. And she's coming off a pretty one-sided win over Chelsea Chandler. It was the fight where Chelsea was just running away inside of the cage, terrified of Norma. And she's gone up against Germaine Durandami, who is somewhat of a UFC legend, first ever UFC featherweight champ, undefeated kickboxer with 30 KOs on her kickboxing resume. And she's very big, uses that size well in the cage, shoots or strikes at a pretty low volume, but has a ton of power. Her only career UFC losses are to Amanda Nunes, who's like the best female fighter of all time. And she's beaten 3 different UFC champions in her career. So she's pretty legendary, definitely a lot better than people are giving her credit for. I mean, I guess the odds for this are pretty close. So she is getting some respect, more so than most 39-year-old fighters get against a fighter like they would get against a fighter like Norma Dumont. And while she does have a super incredible record, all of those accomplishments occurred like 5 to 7 years ago. That's when she fought these caliber of fighters. And I think she's pretty much done. Norma is a level above her pretty much everywhere, I think, at this point. So I'm going to go with her, especially at half the price of Germaine.
Right on. All right, on to the main card itself now. I believe the first one we're going to talk about here is the Trevor Peek fight, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, walk us through how this one is going to go here between the Cannibal. I like how they have the nicknames on this site. Grant, you're muted, by
Okay,
the way.
so Trevor Peak is $2.53 on PS. Campbell is 236, so it's pretty much a pick 'em. Peak, high pressure fighter. He definitely wings punches. He fights with his hands open. If he gets close, he'll try to grab your legs, get you down to the ground. He really has no base in any fighting style. Pretty much has like borderline zero actionable skills, but he's super powerful and applies a lot of pressure. He's coming off a win over Muhammad Yahya. Really showed a lack of technical abilities, but also a granite chin. Newly added wrestling in his arsenal, so some improvement. And Charlie Campbell, technical striker, picks his shots for sure. Doesn't really come forward at you, kind of dances around, waits for his openings. He's definitely hittable, keeps his hands low when he's striking, but he has decent leg kicks, good takedown defense, and is busy on top when he gets on top. And he's coming out of the Serra-Longo fight gym, so some good fighters around him. He's coming off a stoppage win over Alex Reyes in his UFC debut. Campbell, I would say, is probably, or I don't think probably, I'd say is the more 100% the more skilled fighter of the two. He has better striking, better grappling, but against a Trevor Peak, I don't know if it's going to be too much of a factor. Because Peak isn't more technical, but he's an absolute animal, and he can break a lot of people who are more skilled than him. His chin is insane, and it's actually really hard to out technique him because he's so wild. Campbell, like, he's a very patient fighter. it's like, to be that patient, it's really tough to beat a guy like Trevor Peek. I think that chin that Peek has at the lightweight class is insane. Like, it's so hard to finish this guy. And he's just going to come forward the whole fight, throw a million things at Charlie Campbell, and I don't think he's going to be able to handle it. So I like Trevor Peek here.
Right on. Grant, you want to come off mute?
Grant, you're muted.
Still
Grant,
on
you're
mute.
muted.
I'm gonna take Campbell here just because I feel like I'm more confident in the performance I'm gonna get. I think Peak probably has the higher upside in this one just with his ability to stay in the fight. But with Campbell, I mean he's been consistent throughout his career. He's had some knockout losses, but also some knockout wins, some decision wins. I just am more confident in getting a full performance from him, so I'm gonna have to lean Campbell there. But I understand the reasoning to go elsewhere.
All right. Moving on to the next bout here. More names that I'm not even going to give a chance of trying to pronounce. Walk us through 'em. Whoa, look at these pictures, though. The bowl.
Yeah, dude.
Woof,
So
clean.
this is my boy here, Walter Walker. This is the younger brother of famed UFC fighter Johnny Walker.
Ooh.
He is the same as Johnny Walker in the sense that he is a 6'6" Brazilian giant. He's different than Johnny Walker in the sense that he is not a wild striker, like walk you down, spinning kicks type of stuff, explosive striker like his brother is. He actually trains and lives in Russia and is like a full-on wrestler, like a really, really clean wrestler. His striking needs a ton of work. He's definitely not his brother in that regard, but he is a lot more controlled than Johnny. He looks to work forward cleanly. He is, he's been grinding the mats in Russia. Like, when you watch him fight, he honestly looks more like a Dagestani than he does like a Brazilian fighter. And he's always looking to just lower his level, shoot takedowns. Lucas Bresky, very well-rounded heavyweight, solid power, speed, good takedowns, works in leg kicks well. And is athletic too, has no problem working in spinning attacks, pretty explosive. His problem is that, I mean, like, obviously Walter can throw with huge power. He doesn't have the best striking. Lucas Bresky doesn't really react well when strikes come his way. He turns his head, which not only makes him absorb the strike more, makes him get hit more often. And I think Walter probably has a shot to dominate here. I think it's going to be really hard for Lucas Bresky to keep it off the ground, and I think Walter should come forward and pretty much ragdoll him here to get it done. His striking is bad, like I said, but he eats a lot of shots and has an insane chin. Like, he pays on the way in all of the time. He does it in every fight, and it doesn't seem to hurt him that bad or affect him. And obviously someone like Lucas Bresky, who's so explosive, could potentially catch him. But I just don't think this division has really seen someone like Walter Walker, a 6'6" Brazilian dude that charges at them, comes forward like a Dagestani, lowering their level and shooting takedowns. Like, Walter is my pick here. I feel like if he wins this fight too, UFC will probably fast track him to some bigger opponents pretty quickly here as well.
Where did he end up IPOing at?
I IPO'd him as I think like 250.
Okay. And Bresky's price, so there's probably some value for Walter as well, right?
Bresky's 206.
Okay. So tighter odds there than you would get elsewhere. I think Walter's a huge favorite. I'm all in on this guy after talking to you about him yesterday. Watched a couple of his fights before joining the UFC. He's definitely electric. I like his ability to push the pace. Bresky is also coming off of, I believe, 3 straight losses. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So it just kind of feels like some fodder that they're throwing up to a guy that they think could have some potential for big fights and a big name in the future just because he has a fun style of fighting, and he's just a dude that looks like an absolute bear. So he's a guy that you can get behind. So I'm all in on Walter for now.
Yeah,
right.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Off to our next bout, we got Bahamundes. I do remember that one.
Bahamonde.
Ignacio Bahamondes.
How this gonna go?
This one feels so similar to Fights we've seen recently in these fight night type cards, you see a 26-year-old dude who is coming off of a loss, and there's kind of a little hype building, but then the hype dies down a little bit, and then they give him an older dude who's lost 3 out of 4. This feels like a tale that we've seen many a time recently. I feel like Bahamondes should be able to get back in the win column here. But this type of fight in general can be sketchy just because you have a veteran who's fought guys like Arman Sarukin. And, I mean, he's been in the ring in many more scenarios than Bahamondes has. So, I mean, this type of fight can go either way. You could walk into something, you could be kind of not ready for the moment and get caught with something and things happen. So it's tough to predict. My lean would 100% be on Bahamondes, but I don't think there's great value there. He's a big favorite, as you can see there. So I would be staying away just because you never really know with this type of thing.
Yeah. Bahamondes, big favorite here on Prediction Strike as well. He is like $1.50 or almost $2 cheaper, actually, or more expensive. And he's a very tall guy, 6'3", uses reach well. I think he probably has this against Giagos. I think his last fight personally was out of character for him. And like against Daniel Zellhuber. And we know Daniel Zellhuber's a beast too. Like, he's long, powerful, has good subs, good takedown and not good takedown defense. His takedown defense is why he lost his last fight, but he has generally good takedown defense outside of his fight with Zellhuber. But I just think his loss was out of character. I think he can bring it back against a guy like Grit said, who has gone 3-4 in his last 4. Takedowns will be a little bit sus, but Bahamondes could probably get it done.
All right. And off to the next bout we go. Morisco.
Chariel.
Ooh, he has a belt in his picture. The Last Pirate versus Machine Gun. I like it. Walk me through it.
It's dope. Okay, so Charrier, Frenchman, $3.07 on the app. Chepe, $4.04. Chepe's 2-0 in the UFC, was a dog in both of his first 2 fights, and he's going up against Charrier, a very explosive striker, super light on his feet, has big punches, uses that to work for control, does a good job of going in and out, finding openings when he sees them. And he has solid takedown defense, few takedowns of his own, relies on those mostly in scrambles though. And Chepe has a really nice resume behind him, BJJ championship, kickboxing credentials, college wrestling, so he's exactly what you would consider to be the full package. He also has solid striking, definitely willing to engage in a firefight. And his most recent win was an injury win over Jack Jenkins, where Chepe had a pretty good takedown and tossed him to the ground, which caused an injury for Jenkins. But it was Chepe who caused the injury. Like, he looked great in that fight. I'm pretty sure he was going to win that regardless. And he's a dog here. Not on Prediction Strike, but consensus odds, he's a dog. And he's won all of his fights as a dog so far. And it's like, we've seen how tough he is until I see anything besides like the great stuff I've seen from him so far. I'm going to ride with him. So I like Chepe.
Let him cook.
Yeah, I agree on the Chepe front. I mean, this fight is pretty 50-50 on odds. You see Chepe be able to beat a guy with a chin like Trevor Peek, who we talked about earlier. I give him a puncher's chance in this one easily. And when you can get him at a little bit underdog odds here, this feels like a must hit. And you have a French guy on the other side. You give a Frenchman the opportunity to surrender. I like the Americans' odds in that one.
Yeah, we got the machine gun.
Ratata. Shout out John Morant. Hernandez.
Crazy stray.
Yeah.
Where is Alexander Hernandez? Maybe Damon Jackson comes up quick.
Alejandro Hernandez. I just realized I was saying Daniel Zellhuber in the where was I saying that? I was saying Daniel Zellhuber instead of Ludwig Klein in.
But Zellhuber did fight the other guy, fought
Yeah.
Georgios.
I was doing that though. Yeah.
The
I meant
Great
Ludwig
Ape
Klein.
versus the Leech. Who will win this fight?
The Leech, dude.
Ooh.
The fucking Leech.
I got the Leech here. The underdog, Mr. Leech himself. He is the more expensive fighter on PS. He's $3.39. Alexander Hernandez is $2.82. So if you're on the favorite side, I mean, there's just inherent value on the Alexander Hernandez side of things. So I think that's worth pointing out. He's a pretty good favorite here, and he's like 50 cents cheaper than Damon. So if you are on the Alexander Hernandez side of things, this is a good spot for you. I like Damon here. Alexander is good skill-wise, very well-rounded, but his record is a little bit spotty. He definitely has wins. He's beaten some good fighters like Beneil Dariush, but he has also lost to some middle-level guys for sure. But he is a very good athlete, good power, good, very fast. He's coming off the loss to Bill Algeo, where he was dropped, taken down, outstruck, looked pretty helpless there. And we saw Algeo lose on the last card here. Damon, what was that?
Cook that man.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to cook anybody, but Damon is a good grappler for sure. That's his main. I think that's like how he wins most of his fights is through his grappling. He'll snatch everything up in scrambles. Willing to bang on his feet too. Mostly uses his striking though to work in a takedown, which he does have a low accuracy when it comes to takedowns, only at 34%. But the reason why his nickname is the Leech is because once he gets you on the ground and he's wrapped around you there, lashed onto you, you can't get out. That's why he's called the Leech. And he's coming off a loss to Billy Quarantillo. He had some success wrestling there, couldn't hang with the striking at all. I don't know. I just feel like I trust Damon to come forward, slow down the pace in this one, make it a grappling match against Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez is a really big, thick guy to be successful at 145 pounds. So I'm a little bit skeptical of him at this weight. He's also so up and down. I don't know if I would ever really trust him to beat most guys that are around him in the rankings. So I think if you're on the Damon side of things, the books are probably the best place to go for it. If you're on the Hernandez side, prediction strike is, but I like the dog here for sure.
Yeah, as a value merchant, I'm big on the Hernandez side. You're kind of hoping on a bounce back spot for either of these guys. They both fought Billy Quarantillo within the last year and a half ish. Both lost. Both have lost 2 out of 3. So, two guys similarly in positions in their careers, both above 30, both kind of looking to make a push here. This is kind of a must-win fight for either of these fighters. I think just given the value on PS, you can get a pretty significant consensus favorite there. With that underdog value on PS, it's almost a must. That's usually for me my take on these scenarios, and I'm not going to change that here.
All right, let him cook. And on to our main event here.
Brendan Allen.
Brendan Allen versus Chris Curtis. Who is going to be the Victory Royale in this fortnight?
Chris Curtis is much cheaper than Brendan Allen on PS. $4.86 last time I checked. Brendan Allen, $12.04. So you're getting a huge price disparity here between these two guys. And it's going to be a really close fight. Brendan Allen is here trying to get his loss back against Chris Curtis. He is on a 5-fight win streak, has a BJJ black belt, really nice low kicks, good takedowns, good overall striker. He used to have issues putting together his wrestling and grappling skills with his striking skills, but he's really this 5-win run right here, I would personally accredit it to that. He's been able to put his striking together with his wrestling and grappling, and he's a much more complete fighter now. And he's coming off a super dominant win over Paul Craig, where he controlled the striking, controlled the grappling, and then got a submission in the third round. The yeah, the Bear Jew. When he controlled the strike, I mean, like he just looks so good in the striking and the grappling, and it's like that. Like these last 5 fights have just been something that we haven't really seen from him in the past. He shook off some of the inconsistency. And he's going up against Chris Curtis, who in their first fight, this is a rematch, already knocked out Brendan Allen. And he's a very clean boxer, great takedown defense, like elite takedown defense, solid power in his hands, works in nice body and leg kicks consistently. And he's always moving around, is really hard to hit, primarily a counter striker. And he's coming off a decision win over Marc-Andre Barral. Allen has improved a lot in like between his last fight with Chris Curtis and now. My concern is that the improvements he's made to his fighting isn't necessarily going to be a factor in this fight with Chris Curtis. Like from what I've seen, what Brendan Allen has improved in is putting together his wrestling and grappling skills with his striking. He's more complete now. It's not like he's become a better striker or he's become a better wrestler. Like he's pretty much the same in both aspects of fighting. And I just don't think that specific improvement is going to matter too much against Chris Curtis. Like we saw, like Chris Curtis has some of the best takedown defense in the division, probably the best takedown defense in the division. So I don't even think Brendan Allen's going to be able to take him down regardless. So it's going to be a striking match again. And we saw what happened the last time it was a striking match between these two. Chris Curtis knocked him out cold. So I don't really see any reason why it wouldn't happen again. Love the value too. And can't ignore that value.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have for this particular card here. Yeah, we'll see you for the next big event. And if you're probably seeing this after we're live streaming for NBA. So until now or then, or whenever now is then, later, y'all. Peace.